Since you've been gone. Ah, since you've been gone. Probably have to redo that whole thing. Turned into. Don't what it turned into. Uh. We'll redo that. We'll resend the link and we'll wait a couple minutes here. Oh, boys. Give me 1 second. Alright, I'm back. Sure, it's kind of cold in here. I'll go with like a red lighting. Yeah, the red looks pretty sick. Or green? Nah, yeah, we're expecting red. Alright. Yeah, I had to start another one. My thing was being a little weird with the bitrate. Also, it just showed that I had 0 viewers, and it said I had 6, but I don't know if you heard what I said, but yeah, it's been. I'll just talk about like the psychology of it all, and like it's been very difficult. I'm not gonna lie. Like I've said it. If you guys have been watching like the weekly scan videos and whatnot, like having caught a partial of this here, like technically I did catch bottom, but I closed out here, like 540, and then I spot traded a little bit of this. I spot traded a little bit of that, but making 30 grand here and then giving back thus far, right? The current drawdown I'm in on the SPY Januaries, which is the main thing, right? The AMDs that I'm in, I have 10 of those. A little bit of drawdown on some UNH that I started as well, but I kind of figured those would. I was just risking down here, so that's not that big of a deal. But for the most part, it's just SPY, really. And this is about it's almost 10K at this point. Each contract's down about 920, maybe to like 1,100. And I have 8 of them, right? I've been talking about that for a while now. And then obviously the 10 AMDs that I have that are down like 85%, which is not fun. But I do think that there's going to be a turnaround for that. And the earnings with Microsoft and Meta, very, very red flaggish. I've talked about that. We'll get a little bit further into that in a second. But this is the majority of my drawdown. Majority of the drawdown started after what I believe to be is the UTAD here, and it's not necessarily this green line at 613. It actually started here with like this biclimax range. Up thrust, in my opinion, was here, so it's technically 609.07. I actually don't like that color. We'll go down. We'll go down here. Hold on. There we go. But it's actually 609.07, right? But I'm gonna use the all-time high as my my gauge or my barometer here. So 613.23. We were just waiting for this to fizzle out, right? This whole thing, and it doesn't have to move up on high volume. Ideally, things break through resistance on high volume. That's a harmonic trading pattern. But for the most part, this has pretty much moved up on low volume with spots of high volume distribution, right? Like May 21st would be a good example. This hammer candle here that occurred wasn't actually a real candle. This was, if you guys remember, it's one of my targets. This is the Phantom print from 527. We had another high volume distribution bar here on June 5th. We've just had a lot of distribution bars, but it's kept going up and up and up. And really, this is a pain trade, right? We kind of knew going into summer, which is why I haven't added too heavy into this. But I just wanted size just in case something did happen. I thought the BOJ and the yen carry trade would unwind. Didn't happen the way I thought. I thought the first set of some CPI data, some PCE data coming in would reflect some inflation concerns, from what happened back in April and a little bit prior to that, would reflect in like the May/June CPI. That didn't happen. Every single time we got really close to a deadline where Trump would, be putting pressure on a lot of different countries, he'd back off, hence the taco trade, and it got pretty frustrating. But I expected that, right? The main thing isn't all the headlines that are hitting. The main thing is the fact that we were going into a seasonal period where vol gets dampened through market maker suppression, utilizing options against the VIX, right? And then what we end up having is a slow grind up through the months of, technically it's July, right? It could be July, August, and August is where it starts to correct. But May, June, July, technically June, July are the main two. Like I said, you could see a little bit that rolls over into August, but usually August is when we start to see a correction. But really just a slow grind up, right? Summer is just where a lot of people take a break. A lot of people will either go cash, or what they'll do is just ride equity longs or buy equity and just kind of ride those up rather than starting new positions via options or derivatives. And I expected this, right? I was just expecting a slow grind up, and that's really what we've seen. But to the main point, we broke above 613, which was that high, and in my opinion, this is all fake, right? And you don't always want to say that and just hold a position. I understand that. If it gets beyond a certain point, I was willing to kind of hold into 640, 645-ish before I kind of close those positions out. And obviously I'm not adding into this as it goes up. But what we'd like to see here is a lot of this just be fugazi, this start to break down. And really what I was waiting for was a shift in volume, right? We should kind of understand right now, and this isn't just a Wyckoff thing, this is in general, right? When you see super high volume at the highs and it's not yielding extensive new highs, right? And it's fizzling out, you're seeing small candle spreads with that high volume, and you're just not getting very, very convincing new highs. Signs of distribution, right? And that's when you can start taking short positions or just keeping a watchful eye for that. And if you then are a Wyckoff trader, or you're looking at certain distribution patterns, you can start to utilize certain aspects of textbook schematics, right? Same thing for the downside, okay? As you start to break down, you come down to a bottom where everybody starts to get super bearish, and then you see a print like this with some of the highest volume that you've seen in a very, very long time. A lot of people will start thinking it's even more bearish, when in hindsight, that's actually not how it's, not even in hindsight, you can see this in real time. This is actually a bullish technically a bullish capitulation that leads to a change of hands. So people that have been buying consistently down are now being stopped out. You're swapping inventory. Big money is now buying, hence the high volume. And this is the start of a new found bottom or an accumulation potential. Now, what we're starting to see here is since April, we've been moving slowly up, like I said, with spot distribution bars on the daily, leading into what is now some of the highest volume that we've seen since, I would say, we haven't seen this since April, this high, right? I don't think anything surpassed it from back in June We got pretty close a couple times. So one of the higher volume bars we've seen since April. So instantly I'm starting to think, okay, this could be the top here. And really, the big thing for me was I don't want to get too deep into economics and understanding what's happening from a macro outlook, but a lot of this is what's happening under the hood just doesn't make sense, right? And it doesn't always have to make sense for a short position, right? Or if you're looking to go short, tops take a long time. We've seen it take almost a year, 2 years sometimes, and it's hard to time. But the big thing is we saw volume now match what we've been kind of understanding, and then Powell hopped on yesterday, if you guys were listening to that, and was very, very hawkish, right? He's been kind of confirming a lot of the stuff that we've been saying in terms of tariffs, a lot of exposure into not only the AI trade, but guys, CTAs are now piling in at all-time highs at just trying to play catch-up, right? A lot of people weren't long here, and a lot of people on this higher low that we ended up taking were also very hesitant as it pushed up into here into these gaps at I think it was like, yeah, it was like 564, right? This was one of my targets. People were, very abrasive here. Up here into this consolidation, people were scared, and people finally started to really utilize a lot of their excess cash up into this range here, right? So a lot of people have exposure at very high ranges and have now kind of reached that threshold. And in my opinion, we could really, really start to see a lot of money dissipate very, very quickly if we are to see some kind of cataclysmic event. So like I said, Fed Chair Powell came out hawkish yesterday, started to have not only tariff concerns, CPI concerns, PCE, he's concerned with that. The labor market he's not so concerned with, but we're seeing a lot of things that aren't aligning with rate cuts, which a lot of people have been, in my opinion, kind of pricing into the market. People were very bullish on a June cut. People were very bullish on a July cut. That didn't happen. People are now bullish on a September cut. It's not looking likely, right? The economy is still showing signs of strength with underlying weakness. And yeah, I just don't see a rate cut happening at all this year, if I'm being completely honest. I don't think a September cut's going to happen. If you guys didn't hear, we have two cycles, right? So we have two CPIs, two PCEs, and then two jobs numbers that are coming out between now and September. So we're going to get a lot of data in between then. But August 1st is the first tariff deadline. So we'll see what that ends up bringing. I'm seeing certain things come out on my phone. I don't know if they're true or not, but it looks like Taiwan got hit with a 20% tariff rate, which is, and I'm trying to transition this into the AMD NVIDIA thesis that I have. But overall, right, this was a good little sign today with some of the highest volume we've seen since April. Bearish engulfing. Looks like the start of a topping process. And really, I'm being patient until we break back under 613, right? With Wyckoff, you really don't want to be too, what's the right word I'm looking for? Impulsive with like the highs. I could easily average into this now. Like I said, I have 8 cons. I could probably take another 10 to 20, get my average into a very reasonable spot where I'm only down like 15, 10%. But this could reverse once again. And big part of this, right, is looking at the EMAs. You don't have to do anything super drastic. EMAs are obviously a big pivotal role. So if we just kind of make this green, we'll make this red, just to color coordinate it. Right, I don't think that this starts to really get ugly till we cross underneath the 21 day, right? Obviously we broke the 9 today, in which this has been a pretty steady uptrend off of the 9 since back here in June 20th primarily. We've been riding the 9 EMA, slight break underneath it on the 16th of July. But this was now our secondary break with a close underneath, right? So as we come down into this like 625, 626 range, I want to see if we bounce off of that one and how high of a bounce it leads to, right? This could just be a top followed by a lower high, right? So, if we end up getting like a little picture drawn here, could get something like this that then sends us lower. I don't know why that's black. But that's kind of what I'm looking at. I do expect some kind of bounce to happen off 626. But from there, do we continue to make a new high? Is this going to be the definitive top here? And that's really what I'm watching. And then from here, as we start to break down, I've been very, very adamant on this. I'm not going to average into this position until we get under 613. And that's not as far away as people think, right? It's like 2 to 3%. Let's see. I think that's a little bit off. Yeah, basically 3%, which isn't that drastic. That could happen in one day. I've seen it happen in one day, sometimes two. So what we're looking for is a breakdown Obviously, a trend would be nice to see a lower high happen off of today's bar, but really what I'm watching, if we're just going to speed this up, is either a push down to 613, lower high off of that, and then a break, or just a straight break would be nice as well, but looking for a retest of 613. Really, right around here is where I'm looking for a lot of my position sizing to be. And then from there, looking for a continuation down to 600, right? And you guys kind of know the gist from here. Off of 600, ideally another lower high, whether that pushes back up to 613, whether it's a less aggressive push with a weak bid that ends up pushing to 608, whatever it may be, looking for that to then kind of lead for a move down into 580. From 580, you guys get the picture, right? Bounce off of 580, which is that phantom print, and then looking for a move down into 564. And really, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this to happen sometime in Q4, hence my January 1st positioning. So it's not, it looks crazy. I mean, it's about a 10 to 12% move, right? That's really what I'm looking for. And if you think about it, I'll probably be getting into this late. I won't be timing the top. So roughly from my entry where I start to average in will be right around an 8% move. And I'm staying ultra patient for this one. But this is really what I've been watching, and this is what I've been waiting for, is this whole move here to fizzle out, confirm that this was just a major fake breakout over that 613 all-time high, where a lot of major institutions were selling into willing buyers, which we are seeing a ton of willing buyers that are just straggling to get whatever they can, right? We saw semis go crazy, right? When people miss the semis, even though it's continued to go up, a lot of people were chasing laggers, right, where they got caught in specific laggers. And then after the semi trade, a lot of people started to go into quantum, right? And then from quantum, we started to see other names blow up, like COS. We started to see a lot of the meme stock names go off. People just chasing different sectors everywhere. And I really think that this could fizzle out very, very quick. Opendoor was another good example, right? And when you start to see that straggle for whatever they could get their hands on, is when you start to see short-term tops really occur. Think back to 2021 going into 2022, the meme stock craze, which I know a lot of you guys have been a part of, really starts to mark the tops when you start seeing cash being pushed into whatever they can to try to get some kind of return out of it. So that's what I'm looking at. Today was a good sign, or a good start for that. Now, taking a look, right, I kind of want to show QQQ. I think QQQ is a little bit cleaner. Right, like I mentioned, 613 is the spot, but if we technically go off of the buy climax, it's over here, right around 609, with the upthrust being here, and it's a little clearer on like a weekly time frame. And if I can remove my EMAs, there we go. That's what it's looking like, where this is all bleh, right? Whatever. A little clearer here on Qs, in my opinion, because this has pretty much led everything, as NVIDIA has been a major contributor to that. So that's really what I'm looking at. Obviously, vehicle would be SPY, but QQQ is what I'm looking at primarily from a structural and a schematic standpoint. But now taking a look at a couple other names, right? Guys, I really have, I don't know, man. I really think that AMD misses. You know, you can speculate whether I'm wrong or not. Obviously, I'm down a good chunk on my positioning, but there's a lot of stuff going on. So, like, obviously, August 1st, deadline for implementing tariffs, which are supposed to be like 25, 50%, right? People have continually bought whatever they believe Trump is tariffing, and that has been known as Trump always chickens out, which is the taco trade. So he says he's going to place a tariff on China. People have been piling into China, knowing that Trump would then back off of his heavy tariff threats, right? Let's say he's doing 150%, 120%. That brings a scare. China names go down, people buy the weakness, and then what ends up happening, Trump backs out, it rallies, right? And I think that's eventually going to end, right? The trades like that and what's known doesn't always consistently work. It just becomes an easy source for liquidity and pushing people into a certain direction to be able to kind of wipe them out. And a lot of the tariff risk, guys, manufacturing costs alone, AMD relies 100%, if you guys didn't know, on TSMC, right? TSMC or TSM is the chip production company. AMD 100% relying on them. So we've seen 25% just already on top of Taiwan imports, and this could increase costs overall by 78%. And I want to try to find this because I think just today, where was it? I found it on here. Give me a second. This might take me a second. I sent this to somebody in a DM. Oh, here it is. Okay. I don't know if this is official. Just today, another 20% tariff on goods from Taiwan just came in. So that could push things upwards to 40% just on Taiwan alone. And this could affect forward guidance, right? Think about forward guidance. A lot of these things have been potentially already priced in, right? A good example of this one would be who just reported? Was it Avgo? It might have been TXN, if I'm not wrong. Oh, who was it? Somebody reported, guys, and I cannot remember for the life of me. Oh shit, this is gonna bother me. Guys, I can't remember. It was one of the semiconductor companies reported, and they said the only reason that they had good numbers was when people heard whiffs of tariff news, right, and the potential numbers for tariff exports. What they did is they front ran a lot of their orders ahead of time to get cheap product, obviously, right? And then that skewed numbers and was essentially an artificial number. And the CEO even said that in his call, and he said that this is looming. This is not going to go away. This is only a quarter away. This is a quarter or two away before we start to see the real drastic effects of this. And then right after that, guys, TXN came out with their earnings, and you guys can see just an absolute plummet, right? From close up here down to the open, that was a 9% gap down, and then continued to fade down to 28%. Now, this is really important. I don't want to go in too much of a tangent. I have some numbers here on my side, so that's what I'm briefly going to take a look at. I mean, great earnings, right? So they beat Q2 expectations. EPS is 1.41 versus the 1.35 expected. Revenue was 4.45 billion versus the 4.36 expected, so a 2.1% beat. Still massive move down. Overall, 12 to 14%. What else? Oh, I think this was it. The CEO, Haviv Ilan, explicitly said tariffs and geopolitical issues are disrupting and reshaping global supply chains. This is not over for the semiconductor industry. So he said, yeah, this actually was it. Okay, so the numbers beat, but the stock ended up having a move down. He said, literally word for word, that management acknowledged customers were ordering ahead to avoid tariffs, and this created artificial Q2 strength, and this sets up potential Q3 and Q4 weakness. That's literally what I've been targeting. Obviously, there's a sector-specific weakness with automotive recovery. Obviously, industrials are starting to show mixed signals, and then China demand remains uncertain, right? China is a big part of this. But overall, similarities are pretty exact, right? Now, what I think could happen here, and if you guys don't know, AMD is way more vulnerable, not only from a beta perspective. So whatever the market sees overall, AMD will exasperate that, right? Very high beta. This has a higher valuation, right? So if we go back to AMD's chart, PE is 115 versus TXN's 25. China exposure, right? TXN is homegrown, essentially, right? They don't have as much reliance or dependence on China/Taiwan, whereas AMD gets everything from TSMC. Their China exposure directly is 35 to 40% versus TXN's 10 to 15. So they've already faced a $1.5 billion hit from export restrictions, and I think that's going to go up. More growth has already been priced in because of the AI boom. I mean, you can consider this forward growth, right? I mean, so they have a lot more room to potentially fall. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is starting to set up, right? So, what else did I want to cover real quick? I had numbers here of what I think is going to end up happening. I had EPS down, like missing by like a couple, literally 15 to 20%. Either way, right? Let's just talk about the charts. That's just some stuff that's underlying that I've been kind of watching. But we pressed pretty quickly, as I didn't necessarily suspect it would happen this quick, right? I was looking for a gap up, and if you guys remember, this is actually where I started my position, thinking that this would be a cup and handle, right, with a drop down into that 138 spot, and then I was going to buy shares. Didn't happen. We ended up having a gap up due to analyst upgrades, and let me check chat just in case anyone's talking. Yeah, there we go. QCOM and TXN. Yeah, QCOM as well. Yeah, good example. Thanks, Craig. I appreciate it. I knew somebody else reported. I just couldn't remember what CEO said what, but QCOM, right? QCOM. This, I would, thank God I didn't buy shares of that. I was going to buy shares thinking that would be an SOS LPS because it looks identical to MU. But another good example, right? QCOM. Look at this. Same exact thing, right? Big drop earnings, tech exposure, massive, massive volume, push down. I think this could maybe catch a bit off 146, but from close to, let's just go to the previous close. That's a 7% move. A lot of these semiconductor names are pulling 7 to 12%. Could get eerie for AMD, right? But going back, I want to find this number, guys. Where is it? Because I put it all in here. Trying to find this, please, God. I'm on stream. I have time. I'm not rushed. I think I'm acting like I'm rushed because it's midnight for a lot of you guys. I lost it. Whatever. Not a big deal. But yeah, this is where the analyst upgrades started to come in. We saw high volume. I would say this is a shooting star. Either way, high volume, long upper wick where we saw selling. We pressed up on low volume. We ended up selling and having this big drop here where I thought we'd actually pull down into 146 and fill that gap. I was going to add, if you guys remember, if you guys are in the Discord, where I was looking for a break under, retest of, and then a continuation down. It ended up closing in a hammer, right? So I didn't add, and then we had just a straight melt up on low volume, and then we saw once again, very similar to down here from the 15th of July, another high volume shooting star or high upper wick that breached into this last remaining gap at 177. There is one more. I won't forget this. This is bull case and worst case scenario. From a bear perspective, this goes 203, 207. So we have to have that in mind. But high volume here, probably signals top, right? Another inside bar that not an inside bar, but kind of closes relatively close to the prior highs above the gap, right? Then slightly breaches back above today, and then a high volume sell, right? And this isn't the highest volume, but we're now seeing majority of our volume come from selling pressure, okay? So important to note this year, we have a couple days till earnings. I would like to see this retest 177.55 and then break back down to 169. I think that's the ideal world where it comes back down and retests this old bottom of the gap, aka our progression gap. So just looking at a move like this, right, maybe a consolidation off of this, or maybe it breaks down a little bit lower to fill this gap down here. And we can start to move some levels around too. I should probably do that just for future reference. So we'd be looking for a move down into 166. And then somewhere around here, I think that we could get that pull, right? Where we end up getting a move down either into 146 for a 14% move. Maybe this breaks underneath. I had the level. I just deleted it. Damn it. What am I doing? Yeah, 153. Sorry. So if it breaks under 153, right? So like this would be nice if it pulls under 153, retest 153. That would be a little more achievable in my opinion, whether it comes off of like with a 172 hold before earnings, that's a 15% move. Or let's say it breaks down to 167 in the next couple days. So if there's something that ends up occurring tomorrow, under 153, right? This is where I'm looking because this would be the bottom of the progression gap. I could see it retesting, failing it to get back above. Then I think we can get a move down into 146, and then from 146, you guys kind of know the deal. Look for a lower high, and then a move down into the ultimate target at 138. So, whether this is the high or not, I'm not too sure. But overall, from this broad range, I'm looking for a 21, 22, 20% pull from those highs. I think AMD is set up from like a technical perspective, a macro perspective. I'm telling you guys, I think that they miss EPS by like 25, 30%. I think revenue is going to miss by like 15 to 20. I think they're going to miss on both. I think they're going to have some pretty big concerns, especially if we continue to see stuff come out tomorrow directly from Taiwan or China, with Q3 guidance not looking too hot for AMD. So that's essentially what I'm looking at there. ARM too, yeah, dude, hell yeah. I forgot about ARM. Craig, dude, I fucking love you, dude. Thank you, man. Cheers, bro. Cheers, cheers. I forgot about ARM. I've just been so locked in on just a couple names, and I'm trying not to spread myself too thin. And like that's another psychology part, man. Like I remember like kind of just not starting out, but doing my own thing with not only myself but for the Discord too, is like finding like the need to always be looking at new things or having new ideas, and being afraid of being it feels like you're lazy, but you're not, right? Like, and just having a couple ideas, letting those ideas play out over a longer period of time. And a lot of the times, I remember back in 2022, I was bearish, but I would go find stuff that had a short-term bullish structure or things that could pay me really quick. And I would get into those, and yeah, they had good moments, but oftentimes they would fail. If they did work, right, that would get me in a bad habit of buying bottoms or buying in low risk to reward. I keep hiccuping, in low risk to reward areas, and then ultimately I would miss the bigger moves, right? And I almost I'm finding myself tempted to do that now. It's hard whenever you look at every single day, like AMD for example. After I got in, these 3 or 4 days were insane, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of straight gap ups in a row. Technically 1, 2, 3, yeah, 6 days in a row. Like I felt like just taking calls or just buying calls and whatever. UNH, I dabbled a little bit into this, right? I mean, I think this is a good RR chart, but I bought shares of this as well, just a heads up, just to disclose that. But yeah, like just finding yourself staying true to the process and not getting shaken out just by short-term stuff. And I know like SPY and AMD, these seem like it's never ending, but in the grand scheme of things, if you guys remember, like I always bring this chart up, right? If we talk about Apple, I was so bearish on Apple. Same exact setup, right? For the most part, where we had our buy climax, up thrust, and then we had this distribution or UTAD after distribution, right? Up thrust after distribution. What the fuck did I say that? Where this lasted for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 days of just consistently going up, right? Technically 18 if we take away this engulfing candle, but how long did this take, right? This took basically 27 days. What did it end up doing? I remember when it broke out through these highs, I took my eyes off of that. I was like, okay, Apple's just going to go nonstop, right? And then from here, it only took to get back underneath the range 26 days. So very, very interesting, and these can really either make you lose interest or they can stop you out. So I'm prepared to wait time, right? Like I said, in the moment, it feels like it's nonstop. It feels like it's going to continue to go up. It feels like you've been in the trade for months or years even. Reality, this took 27 days. It corrected, broke back underneath the UTAD range. It gave you an LPSY here, right? Just on the daily chart. Broke back down, pushed back up. And then this is where it's important to also understand weekly time frames. They give you a weekly LPSY, right? So broke down, pushed up, weekly LPSY, and then finally pushed down, if you guys remember, into the target that I had, which was down at this lower gap here, 173. So you guys hopefully get the picture, right? These things can take time. That's why I'm not too concerned since we broke this high. Let me move my charts around now. What's up, Rordry? How you doing, man? Doing all right, bud? Hope you're good. Let's see. So since we broke this high, pushing 34 days. So a lot more days. So like I said, it has been a month, but pretty much on par with, I would say Apple. But Apple's always one that I kind of look back on because this one slipped away because I definitely took my eyes off of this one. AMD, right, back in the day. This one was way more extensive, but this literally was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days before it started to do its distribution. NVIDIA, if we go back to when it did its distribution, this one was a little bit more difficult. I still, I don't know exactly where it was. Like, it technically could have been here. This one was a little bit more difficult. This was way more aggressive in my opinion, but kind of the same thing that I think we could be having here. That's another chart we'll talk about, but AMD is the big one, right? I think this is what ends up happening. And like I said, I'm saving because dude, my contracts are down like 85%. If it can get some kind of gapper back down, whether it's from up here at like 170 or 169.80, maybe it breaks down to 166. If we can get a move down underneath 153, which is not asking too much, 13 bucks, right around 13%. Is that right? Yeah, right around 13 bucks or so. Um, I'll add into this trade and add on a retest of 153, and I think I can get a massive win off of this down into 138. So that's that. Something else that I'm kind of looking at, guys, and like it's a gauge here. Obviously, it's a levered ETF, so whenever things are at extremes, you're going to see piling into the inverse ETFs. But SOXS is very interesting. I've traded this a few times, but this name is seeing a ton of volume here at the lows, and this has a potential to break structure, right? You guys always got to remember there's important structure on a lot of these names, and inverse ETFs respect structure very well, right? If you can get a breakout over a lower high and it bases a lower high, its odds are it's going to see a move to the upside, right? And same thing with the underlying stock. I mean, if you end up taking out a lower high, you base it and it ends up holding that as a higher low, it's going to rally. But this will see a much larger move, right? If we end up getting up to this like $8 gap, this could be a nasty move, right around 11-12%. The gap fill itself was at 935, but really just kind of keeping my eye on SOXS, maybe as like a secondary trade that I can end up taking. Obviously needs to break 788. You guys can see nice little lower high here before it tried to push back down into this triple bottom. So if it can, break out above this, base that, and then look for a move to the upside right around $8.84. I'm looking for an $8 call on this. I would be happy to take that. Or you guys know, right, if we can get a high tight flag here, so if we take the close to the open, this is kind of like the range that I'm looking at to potentially enter in a little bit early on a higher low. So it would obviously do something like this, where it pushes up, pulls down, gets a higher low relative to this low here, right? That could be an opportunity. So I'm looking at SOXS. That's another one that I could potentially pair with AMD. And I still have 10 contracts of NVIDIA, guys. NVIDIA was a very interesting one. I had 20 cons, I closed at 10, and then I just kind of let them go because we saw that massive gap up. But for the most part, these are pretty much back down to like only down 30 a con. So I'm not too upset with these. So I'm just kind of holding these. But, we'll end up taking a further look at this. I want to see how this ends up looking to finish out the month before I do anything else. NFPs tomorrow, so we'll see what ends up happening with those last 10 contracts there. But I do think this could pull down to 173 to finish out the week. But yeah, AMD is just the main one. Don't want to get too sidetracked. I am looking at, you guys, Meta. I've been talking about this one for a really long time. This has been a tough one to catch, but maybe I was mistaken. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm always happy to be corrected. But I was looking at, kind of this range here is when it caught my interest, and then it started to hold up here, right? You guys remember like the earnings that occurred back here? This is why it sparked my interest. I thought it could sell back down to 550, and then it pushed up and created this consolidated zone where it slightly breached the gap here, but then consolidated and ripped higher. And then I took a couple losses on this, but it looks like it was starting to top up here. Just not really making new highs. Anytime it did make a new high, it would break back down into the range. And then I started to look at this a little bit differently, where I could see a potential buy climax here, an up thrust over here, and then this looks like, and even if I'm wrong about that, guys, even if I'm wrong about where I'm structurally marking things, seeing an April bottom with this much volume, spot trades of high volume sells that are leading into a move all the way back up to the highs, and then you're seeing your highest volume ever, not ever, but pretty fucking close to April, right? And then you take a look at Microsoft as well. Microsoft, a disgusting candle over the highs, right? And then QQQ, right? You got to remember, Meta was up 12%, Microsoft is up like 9-10%, and the Qs finish red. Big red flags, big red flags, and it's sparking my interest that this could all just be one major like liquidity exit at the highs, using earnings as your catalyst. People are front running the rate cuts. Weird spinning top here, right, on some of the highest volume that we've seen. So naturally, I am looking at Meta again. If this is to sell back down underneath 740, retest 740, I'm in there. I'm in there, and obviously you're looking for a move down into the close, right? So the gap up would be at 695.21. But I think that this could really trend. I think this could be. I don't know. I don't want to say this could be like the fate of 2026, 2027, because it is a scary name sometimes. But I think that this can 100% move like something like this, right, where it just starts to trend all the way down and give you a look like this, all the way to 650. And if that's the case, man, like I think this is going to be an insane move. Looking from just a 740 retest down into 550-ish, 549. It's almost 200 points, 26% on the underlying. Could be really disgusting there, but just needs a little bit more time to simmer. And this is why I've been waiting and just sitting here, kind of waiting for like not only the tariff stuff to resolve, but also waiting for tech earnings to resolve as well. So this is the one I like. I really don't like Microsoft too much. A lot of people have been asking me about Microsoft. I think this is a little bit more difficult. Maybe the same thing applies where you're looking for a break back under 468, but that's a pretty big move. And I could see this breaking back down into this internal range here. So you guys take a look from like here to here. There's clearly a range within that. So maybe an equilibrium move. So midpoint through this is something you could look for. But I would just be targeting like 429 or 424.90 to like here, like 394. If you guys just want to trade the gaps, that'd be something you could look at. But I like Meta versus Microsoft for sure. So that's on watch. We'll take a look at NVIDIA and how that develops. But AMD is probably the number one semi. Meta is just something that's kind of in the mix once it breaks under 740. SOXS is probably something for fun that I'll be looking to trade. Just maybe 10 contracts to see if I can do something with the $8 call. Not adding into the Januaries yet on this until we break under 613. So a lot of this is very predicated on whether we break the UTAD high, right? Or I'm sorry, the old all-time high or whatever that buy climax high is, assuming that this is the current range is our UTAD. So just waiting on hands for now, right? Before I get a little bit more aggressive, but things are like finally like, okay, I can wake up out of bed now and be happy looking at my P&L or looking at charts because it's been pretty rough. Yeah, UNH, we'll see what ends up happening this. I did start shares here. I don't have any plan to close these just yet, but very similar, right, to a lot of other bottoming, right, where we came off of like pretty I would say sound not only UTAD but very sound distribution, right, where we had a big move here. This was the LPSY, I would say, but nice little distribution here. We got a weekly LPSY on this right hand side here. And then from here, you guys can see it sold off on pretty, I would say, low volume, right? This distribution didn't occur on high volume. It was just multiple fake breakouts over the highs. But now you're seeing some of your highest volume back here on the May lows. And then you're seeing an uptick of high volume once again here. And if we can take a look at the daily, it's a little bit more apparent where you see high volume here, obviously gaps down, but you get a very high volume hammer. Consolidates, creates a nice range here, and then you saw another high volume inverted hammer here, and then another high volume bar here. So maybe like a sweep underneath, reclaim back above 248. This is something I'm for sure watching. I took 5 contracts of some August 15th to see if we can potentially fill up here to 282. Don't think this ends up happening, if I'm being completely honest. So we'll give it the week to let this play out. But yeah, that's pretty much that. And then one other stock I am looking at is going to be Reddit. They reported today as well. Really big gap up. So this is how the chart initially looked. And big focal point here would be these highs up here, right? So you guys can see this is where it consolidated before it ended up breaking out. I mean, this even looks like an upthrust after distribution too, right? Just taking a look at this little range here. It distributed back down. Obviously, same as most charts, but it pulled back down in April to fill this gap at 81. And then looks like, I don't know, man, this could be a very interesting chart too. Like now that I look at this could be a redistro. All in all, right, I'm just kind of seeing, and this doesn't mean I'm taking it, right, at all, but like I'm looking for a pullback to hold 182 to 174. You guys can see it a little bit better on the 4-hour. Right, so as I said, This was that prior distribution range where we had highs here, highs here, highs here, highs here. Highs finally kind of became support in this general range. It ripped out, made a new high, pulled down LPSY. Dude, this actually looks like a fucking distribution now that I look at this a little bit more. Oh, this could change things. Is there a lower gap? I don't know. This is tough. We'll have to see what it ends up doing tomorrow. Yeah, because yeah, like this was for sure old resistance. LPSY here. It sold down, filled the gap. This reminds me of AMD. I try to draw comparisons to so many old charts, but AMD did the same exact thing. You guys remember where it had the distribution here, kind of gave an LPSY here, sold down, redistributed here, gave another UTAD right here that broke through this. Dude, I remember so many people were long here, guys. If you guys were around in the Discord at the time, like I was telling everybody, this is redistro, this is redistro, like, and it did, right? And it broke out through the top, and so many people were looking at this as like, you know, whether it was like I don't know, people were drawing wedges at the time and stuff like that. I know a lot of people were drawing flags, whatever the case may be, and so many people bought this breakout. And once it did that, it really just gapped down, made new lows, and pressed down for so long. And this is when the stock became super hated. Reddit kind of looks like that, right? Especially, you know, if we just draw like a little box to reference back to this spot here. Let's just draw this here, right? So if we go back to the 4-hour, maybe that's too high of a move. Maybe I'm tripping. We'll just see. I do like Reddit. If it can just pull back down a little bit, as I said, hold these old highs here. Oh, wait, let's go back to the 4-hour. You can hold these highs here, hold this little lower high that was like the LPSY, do something like this, right? I do think that this can get like a continuation back up into like 206.77. And there's an unfilled gap up here, 206, 216. I'd probably look for like 205, 210 calls. So just one long that I have on watch that's also paired with UNH, just something to kind of, you know, wet the whistle if we need to, for a long side trade. If we're not getting any downside moves or the market kind of stalls out. Reddit's for sure one of those names. But yeah, that's an interesting chart. I don't know if that's too high up, looking at the 4-hour. Very interesting, because I want to see, like, from like a percentage perspective. That was an 18% move. What was AMD back then? I don't know, dude. We'll have to see how it looks. We'll have to see how it looks. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got, guys. Nothing super crazy. Just yeah, like I said, man, just kind of keep your head in there. Like tops, we should know this, man. Distributions are hard. Timing tops are hard. Trading shorts are very hard. But at the same time, right, if we go back to SPY, this was hard too, right? A lot of people had lost faith in the market during this April pullback. A lot of people were giving up and capitulating out of stocks. And, you know, hindsight's always 2020, especially for that. Like, we were very blessed to be able to capture a portion of this. And I'm very thankful I was. But, you know, now that we're at the highs and we're seeing all of these things that have made me money previously, right? Or if you guys trade this way or you guys don't, right? Like, you can just see this from like a sentiment perspective. Things are very extreme. I've traded this setup time and time again, dating all the way back to 2018, 2019. It was very prominent in 2021, 2022, a little bit in 24. But I've traded this setup a lot, and it can feel very overwhelming. It can make you feel like you're wrong, especially if you're sized too heavy too quickly. That's why I usually just take beginning starters on these and just wait for a break back underneath that old high, wherever the buy climax slash up thrust is, and just wait, right? Because it can definitely feel a certain way. But you know, still blessed enough to, like I said, I've only given back 10K of like the 35 that I made in April in a couple of the spot trades here. So I'm not, you know, I'm not desperate yet. It just feels like I am being lazy, but sometimes these are the best things to do. Just be patient, outlast the early bears, outlast everybody that you can with a long expiration contract, and just wait, man. Let people try to outsmart the market or act like they're smarter. Those people will fizzle out, and then you'll have all the undisciplined people that will get weeded out as well. And then that's your opportunity. And don't be afraid when the time comes. And we're just very close, right? Like there's been a couple spots where I'm like, oh, this could be it. This could be it. Like we just gotta wait and see. And then it, of course, fucking buyer steps in off the 9 EMA, and you get like a candle like this here, right? Or a candle like that here, and then you can't do anything about it. These could be these 3 days here could be very, very important. Like I said, though, just want to set it up. We'll get rid of the 9. We need to see what happens here with the 20-day. Does it give us a bounce for a new high? Does it give us a lower high, or do we fail through that? If we end up failing through that, I think that we're good for this to come back down to 613. The contracts that I have for January should be probably like 15-20% red, which is totally fine. Then once it breaks back under, right, 613, right, it gives us a lower high and then breaks under, we can continue to add not only here on this lower high, but also on the retest and failure underneath 613. So, all right, that's pretty much it, guys. And you got these. A lot of these are happening like right now, dude. Like so many of these names are giving these same exact vibes. It's not just SPY or like the Mag 7. Like Pan W is doing the same exact thing, right? Like however you want to draw this up, whether maybe it's more apparent on the weekly, but like they're all giving the same exact looks, right? With this very, very basic distribution pattern with a biclimax and upthrust, and then you're seeing a UTAT over the top, and these names are all starting to sell, guys, all of them. This should continue down to 163, right? Earnings are coming up August 18th. I wouldn't be surprised if this sells into August 16th and then finds a short-term bottom there, but a lot of these names are all showing the same exact signs, the same exact distributions. They're just playing out with different time frames of how long it extends above the old high before it has its corrective state, and then the aggressiveness of how quickly it does it. But yeah, just wanted to just keep everyone's head in the game, keep everyone sharp, make sure everybody's still good mentally, because this is a hard game, man, especially shorting. Like this is not easy, but the key is to get reps into the market, consistently be watching charts, have an Evernote or have some kind of folder where you save stuff in there. I can't stress that enough. Like if I didn't have some of my old 2022 distributions, I would feel very lost. You guys can see me consistently referencing AMD, referencing Apple, referencing SPY from back then. During April, guys, when I was trading the bottoms here, referencing my I think it was my 2023. There was like a major 3 lower low accumulation that occurred on QQQ back then, and just having these little folders and in these previous interactions with specific stocks that you can pull from that can give you guidance, but also give you, solace in the fact that you're right. And this is, whatever your system is, just trusting the chart and trusting your system, because if you've been there before, you've felt those emotions, right? And that's the hardest part, is the emotions, and that comes from a lot from position sizing and not taking super short dated stuff. But yeah, that's I don't want to get too deep into a tangent, but once this is all over, man, if we do catch this short back down to 564, I am going to be taking more shares, if I'm being completely honest. I think, yeah, that'll probably be the next move, but yeah, we'll see what AMD ends up bringing. We'll see what the next couple days bring with SPY, if it can move closer to 613, and what August 1st tariffs end up bringing for us. And yeah, I think the big one is obviously going to be that, and NVIDIA earnings at the end of the month. So all right.